I know that vaccinations have been a concern with some of the employees and corrections officers in our prison in New Hampshire. Do you have any idea if that's been an issue in other prisons around the country?
Yes, so it certainly was an issue everywhere around the country, not only in prisons, but in the community as a whole. And I've looked into that as well. So with respect to inmates, 95% have been offered vaccines. Now, unfortunately, as with the community as a whole, not everyone accepts, but as of right now, at least 52% have received at least one vaccine dose. With respect to the Bureau of Prison staff, 100% have been offered vaccines, 51% are fully vaccinated, and another 661 have received, in addition to that, have received their first vaccine dose. So we're in the right direction here. There is the same problem that there is in the community at large, some resistance to this, which frankly I do not understand. I rushed out to get my vaccine as soon as it was available. But right now we have enough vaccines for everybody who is willing to take it. And
is there any consideration around trying to better engage with staff, and I assume inmates, but particularly staff, around why this is important and the difference that it can make for them?
Absolutely. Education on this issue, as with the CDC's general effort to educate the general population, is ongoing, and we don't want this to be a problem, obviously, for the protection of our staff and for our inmates, and so we're going to do everything we can to induce people, incentivize people to take the vaccines.
Thank you very much. Senator Moran.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. General, shortly after the President's inauguration, the President issued an executive order on the renewal of DOJ contracts with privately operated criminal detention facilities. I believe that applying this executive order to the U.S. Marshals Service is a serious mistake. Unlike the Bureau of Prisons, which I assume the administration really was directing their attention to, I'm not sure of that, of course, the Marshals don't own any of their own facilities. They exclusively contract with the Bureau of Prisons, state and local prisons, and jails and private facilities. Closing private facilities will inevitably require federal prisoners to be housed at facilities further from courthouses at which their cases are being considered. There are ethical and constitutional concerns with moving prisoners potentially far distances from their families and legal counsel. However, we are now also learning that this policy will cost hundreds of millions of dollars for U.S. taxpayers. The Department's budget request estimates that implementation of the executive order will cost the U.S. Marshals Service $75 million in additional transportation housing costs, and that is just for fiscal year 2020. So my question, General, is, has the Department consulted with the White House about those costs and what I think is unintended consequences of applying the executive order to the U.S. Marshals Service?
Well, thank you for your question. There is a principle involved here, leaving aside the specifics of the issue you're raising about the Marshals. The administration's policy, and I believe to be the correct policy, is that prison is government work. It is a government function, and it contravenes sometimes the due process clause to be keeping people in privately owned areas which are not responsive to all of the requirements of federal law, and which are not as easy for us to supervise as they would be if they were federal employees. Now, that said, you put your finger on the correct distinction, which is it's relatively easy for us to have done this with respect to the Bureau of Prisons because there was already Bureau of Prisons space. With respect to Marshals, as you point out, this was contracted space. So we have a plan of phasing the Marshals part of this in over a somewhat longer period. The money is to move them from private space to state or local government space so that we still are satisfying our concern that this be a government function. You're right about the amount, but this is the amount necessary to transfer the people from one to the other. I don't think this will be a problem in the longer run. I also completely agree with you that it's important to have particularly detention areas near where somebody lives. It's important from the point of view of family connections and continuing connections to the community. and it's also important from the point of view of having appropriate legal representation and lawyers, defense lawyers, not having to travel so far that they're unable to do that. So your concerns are my concerns.